In 2 months, Minnesota Democrats and Republicans will hold their state conventions on the same weekend, the final one in May. The main order of business for delegates will be endorsing candidates in the top races on this fall's ballots. Minnesota's election features an open U.S. Senate seat and an open governor's race. Republicans have a very competitive contest to determine their eventual nominee for governor. We've been speaking with some of the candidates on this show. You can find those at our Politics Friday podcast. One of them is with us today, Mike Lindell, the founder of MyPillow. Even for a first-time candidate, he's someone who is widely known given his ties to President Donald Trump, stances he's taken, and controversies he's stirred up. Mike Lindell, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me on.
So you toyed for running for governor in the past, but didn't run. You went ahead this year. What was the tipping point?
When I was trying for running for governor before, that was right before the 2020 election. I was going to run in 22, and with everything that happened there, I've spent 5 years trying to make our elections secure, get to paper ballots, hand counted, voter ID, all these different things that we have the Save America Act that's out there now. So all my efforts and stuff that we put in millions of dollars into securing our elections, and right now we're in a good place. Even in Minnesota, the things that are going to be in place. People have asked me, well, Mike, if the elections are, the voting machines are still here, and you still have all this early voting and all this stuff that Minnesota even had before anyone else. That doesn't sound too secure. But there are different things in place now, and there's things that are going to be in place where I think it's as good as it's going to get based on the footprint we have. So I will tell everyone this: I believe Minnesota's election and the nation's will be based on everything that we've learned that happened over the last 5 years. It'll end up with it, whatever that is. I think it's going to be a lot better than it was before the last 5 years happened, before all these problems have been exposed.
So you'll trust the outcome a little more than you did in the past, in some past elections.
Yeah, I trust the outcome. And if there is anything that goes on, it's going to be a lot easier to catch it this time.
All right.
We had fraud in Minnesota, with Minneapolis. We had different things that happened in 2020. And I think it'll be a little different this time. But I have a plan.
Rates of voter fraud are pretty low in Minnesota, but you had to establish Minnesota residency to run this time. Is that all set? Are you full-fledged and able to go?
Oh, yeah. I've lived in Minnesota all my life. I moved to Texas for 6 months. We have a house in both places. My wife and I, she lives in Texas. I just moved back to Minnesota over a year ago, a year and a half. You have to be in Minnesota a year before the election. But I'm plenty. I've been here a year already.
You're campaigning as an outsider. How much have you familiarized yourself with the state's budget and how you might want to change it?
All I've been doing is due diligence. I met with. I have. When you talk about downtown, let's talk about the welfare programs and all that. Not just the fraud. Once you take the fraud out and get rid of that, all these programs need to be vetted and looked at. Do they get a good return on your investment? Since I quit addiction back in January 16th of 2009, for 12 years straight, I worked with these programs and put millions into Minneapolis, St. Paul, into like your Teen Challenge, your Salvation Armies, people that were homeless. So I have a whole platform that I had already set up that I've been working on for years, and it uses private sector money with these vetted programs. Now you vet them first to see if you get a good return, and you end up getting you save about 40% using the private sector money. So these are programs I'm going to put in.
So you want to outsource more state programs to other entities? That sounds like to me.
No, we're not outsourcing. You would be subsidizing them with private sector money, but also vetting them. All of our programs, some of them are just so wasteful and stuff. So those programs, to be able to save that money, those are things I'm going to do. I've got a blueprint to make. I want to remove sales tax at the box store level. At the store level, you still have internet tax up there, still tax that, your MyPillows and your Amazons. We need to bring business back into Minnesota, and we need to these malls. Minnesota had the first mall in the United States, Southdale Mall, and it's a shame. I go there 2 weeks before Christmas, and the place isn't even busy because people are they're spending money at home in the internet and stuff. We need to bring people into our state get rid of the sales tax at the box store level and level the playing field. I have many different ideas how we're going to balance the budget.
That in-person retail sales tax plan, I don't know what it costs, but I do know that the state sales tax is kind of one of the workhorse taxes. It's $8 billion a year. That seemingly would leave a substantial hole, no matter how much is that in-person portion.
I've studied other states that have this. You bring in so much other business to the state, and and remember, you still have your internet tax. So you have your internet tax up there. Um, there's you look at that. You're not leaving. To me, you're not leaving a hole. You've got um, the like I say, the business that comes in from the surrounding states and bringing business back to Minnesota to buy here. There's and we're doing studies there. Maybe you have to go a little higher on the internet one, which would hit MyPillow and your Amazons. You balance it. You're not going to leave a hole there, no matter what. You wouldn't leave a hole there just to save money. You need to get this balanced. But one of the biggest ways is to look at these programs and vet them and you already have billions of dollars that were stolen from them, and now you need to vet them. I also want to do with we have the highest income tax and corporate tax in the United States. I mean, it's
How much would you cut those?
I need to look at those. Those need to be cut a lot. But you've got to, I think there's going to be enough savings in all these welfare programs that are fraudulent, need to be looked at and redone. And you're going to save enough there. And same way with our property tax. Um,
I want to get. I will get to fraud in a little bit. I want to stay on taxes for a second here.
yep.
Property taxes. You said you want to limit annual increases to what? What would that cap be?
On which the income tax?
The the property
The
taxes.
property tax, they're tied in with our schools, and we've got a big problem there. They're all funded with these bonds, like a Ponzi scheme, and then you get more bonds to fund the bonds, and and then when you run out, you raise people's property taxes. This needs to be looked at from the genesis of why you're raising the property tax. That's something just 2 months ago. I have been sitting around. I have dove in with the teachers, our education, what we're going to do there. Follow the money needs to follow the student. We've got all kinds of problems in our education system. We went from third in the nation, I think, or something like that, to like in the low 30s, and we spent 29% more money in our education during that time. So you
So what is the answer, like a voucher style program to let people go to private schools? What is it?
absolutely. But there's a reason we spent so much money and then we failed. What I do as a businessman, like I'll give an example how I will fix that. You look at other states and what they've done. Mississippi went from the low 30s to like they're in the top 5 in the nation now. I'm going to go down and I'm going to be doing this shortly. Go down. Hey, how did you do that? You know, what did you do? And you take their footprint and move it here. They did something very right. When you're in business, you look out there and you copy things that are doing right, and you things that they're really bad. You're going to have to get rid of them, and stop the bleeding. And there's a perfect example of what you could do right away. You bring in this, they did it right. Whatever they did, you look at it and you go, wow, this worked here. It's going to work here in Minnesota, because what we did, we spent 29% more money. The money that's wasted in Minnesota is beyond belief. You get rid of the waste, and then we won't have these high income tax.
Just back to the property tax. So you want a limit on the annual increases, but you haven't figured out what that cap would
Yeah,
be
I
yet.
don't. I mean, the seniors, you should never have, for our seniors, you shouldn't have any property tax. This is your house are paid for, and this should be this. With that, I'm really still looking into that, because it ties back to how is there so much money spent on our education and yet we fail. You've got to stop that, because that's what keeps our property tax raising. If you get rid of that, you can get the property taxes down. We don't have that number yet. You've got to go by how much you save over here to give it back to the people.
Okay, aside from that social service spending you talked about, where else do you want to cut spending in state government? Where else would be on your chopping block?
Well, I think you um, I'll be looking at every just like I do with my own business. I'm going to look everywhere, check everywhere where you can, not just where you can cut costs, but then give this back to the people. We've got to cut our costs. The biggest thing to me is probably 90% are these welfare programs, and it goes far and wide. And if you do the savings, or not just cut. I'm not saying cut the programs. Some of them might be good, but you can streamline it and make them into something that's where maybe 100% or maybe 95% of your money actually goes to the need, instead of all this red tape and all this bureaucracy. And you got to cut a lot of regulations in Minnesota. The regulations that are holding back small business, many businesses are ready to exit Minnesota. I'm still here with
Well,
MyPillow, even though the regulations here and it's just the stuff you have to go through is almost as bad as California.
is there anything specific approved in the past few years by lawmakers that you'd seek to repeal? Any new laws, whether it be budgetary or not?
That law where it's where it hurts all of us, where the parent, your teacher, I'm sorry, if you're a parent, you get paid, and your employee has to pay. Your employer has to pay
Paid
them.
family leave?
Yeah, to take off.
That you want to get rid of it, or what?
Absolutely, you got it. This was being done. You got to go to we did stuff like that at MyPillow, at my company. But you got to reward the employers that are out there that are doing good things for their employees. Now you're forcing things that you're forcing this to happen. It wasn't looked at. I could sit here and talk about that for an hour, and there are so many things that are not
Well,
good.
we don't have an hour
Right,
today,
I
so
know, but
let me
there's
keep
so many things
let me
that are
keep moving
not
here.
good about that program that hurt all of us taxpayers. They really hurt the employers. For instance, if you have a key person that leaves to go take care of his child, if he has leaves now, and then you have to go out and get someone else. And if you get someone else, now you have to take the other person back. It just doesn't work,
Okay.
this expenses that the employers have.
We're just coming off the immigration operation here that the federal government had. Your platform calls for more cooperation with ICE. Tell me more about why.
Well, I didn't. Here's the thing. I got a lot. I can say a lot about that. In Minnesota, with
One or two things would be great.
in Minnesota, we have over 1,000 illegals in our prisons. These are our felons, our murderers, everything that's in there, and we pay 85,000 per inmate per year. So it's about $110 million that we're paying in Minnesota to house these illegals and these felons. That doesn't even count the county jail level, which most illegals will end up committing a crime, which is whether it's driving, a misdemeanor, a gross misdemeanor. Now, if you get rid of all of them, you cooperate with the federal government, come and grab these, bring them back to their countries, get rid of them. We don't have to pay for them anymore. And then you don't need to go door to door looking for these bad people like worked in Memphis and Washington, D.C. Another thing in Minneapolis, I do want to say, is we have some of the strictest protest laws in the nation, and they're not followed. They're not followed. They're not enforced. It's disgusting. They blocked off 35W a few years ago, about 6, 7 years ago. We wouldn't be able to do that. You blocked it off. My employees couldn't get to work from the inner city of Minneapolis. And this stuff has to change. You need to enforce. There's nothing wrong with protesting, but you don't get to commit crimes while you're protesting.
You've been critical of Lisa Demuth. What gives you pause about her?
Here, with Lisa, I went to these debates, and she's up there, and she's kind of bragging up that she was a year and a half ago. I did this with the fraud, and the Democrats stopped it. I'm going, well, just because you have an R before your name, why weren't you yelling louder? This happened on all their watch. We need a different input to get a different output. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat. You guys, when this money was being taken from we the people, you should have been up there just because you got stopped here. Do more. Do everything you can as this money is pouring out of Minnesota into other countries. And so I just think she had her chance. She's been there. She was being Speaker of the House. She's been there. Nothing got done. Here's what we're at. The spot we're in Minnesota is terrible.
What about Kendall Qualls? He's another one seeking that kind of outsider mantle.
And, he's an outsider. I've lived in Minnesota all my life. He got similar stories. He grew up and I grew up in a trailer court in Chaska. I mean, his story. I don't think he has the qualifications. None of them do that I would have as not only as a businessman, but I've been immersed in politics the last 5 years of everything you can imagine. And I have the recognition you have to win Minnesota. That's key. You have to win. You can have all these things and all these credentials, but you have to win. I can win. I've already raised upwards of $1 million. I'm out nationally. I can raise money to pour into Minnesota to beat Amy Klobuchar. We have to start. No, Amy Klobuchar. This all happened under her watch. We have a very blessing of that. Hey, people want change in Minnesota. I live down in Minneapolis. I can take all down there. I can get those peoples to vote. I can get outstate Minnesota with my campaign. I'm going to do now. 250,000 people voted for Donald Trump in 2020. They didn't even bother to get out in 2022. I'm going to get out the word in every nook and cranny in Minnesota. Hey, you guys, we need to get out to vote. We have to win. This is a critical midterm election.
When was the last time you spoke to President Trump, and do you expect him to get off the sidelines in this race soon?
When I spoke to him, it was a week before 3 days before I ran, and I've texted him on different things he's doing, but he did come out and said, Mike, he was just like, it wasn't a full endorsement, and I don't know. I wanted him to know when I told him I was running and thinking of running in August. We're very good friends, and I'm saying I didn't want him to be contingent on him endorsing me. I didn't want to say, hey, if you endorse me, I'll run. I wanted him to know I'm 100% all in to win Minnesota and to win and to help secure Minnesota and get us back to a time where we have a great economy and great life here in Minnesota. I didn't want him to be. I didn't want it to be contingent on his endorsement.
But if
will
he backs
endorse me? What?
But if he backs somebody else, will you get out?
If he backs somebody else, would I get out? No, I'm in to win this to beat Amy Klobuchar. When I go in, I'm all in, and I'm going to win, and I'm going to do everything I can to win. So,
one more before I let you go here, because we're coming up on time here. Is you've had a lot of legal run-ins, some of it dealing with your election push personally, and the head of your company. How much did the public weigh that when assessing your candidacy?
Well, like I said to Esme Murphy, the $5 million challenge, when the evidence that I had lost, that got overturned in Minneapolis by the Eighth Circuit. They said Mike is right, 100%. I won. So, and then all these other things, if fighting for our country to secure our elections, I think that is it's not baggage. That's actually, I have the receipts. I know where everything in Minnesota, we're going to have Minnesota very secure as it can be in our elections here in Minnesota, because we want people to get elected and not selected. We've had too much fraud go on. Do you think there's fraud in our welfare system? Think of our elections.
But some of these companies, some of these companies that have taken on your company said that you've been, you owe them millions of dollars in back.
Well, that Brian, that just came out. That's it's called Operation Arctic Frost, and in fact, MyPillow was just mentioned by Ted Cruz 2 days ago in the Senate hearings that MyPillow was the #1 attacked the company ever, and there was 9 senators attacked. All my people that are owed money from MyPillow, I didn't do this to them. We put all this in under Arctic Frost too. They're well aware of what happened. So
the public shouldn't hold this against you, is what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely not. I didn't do it. Our own government did to it. It's called Operation Arctic Frost. The public can look it up. MyPillow was flourishing. We had thousands of employees. American Dream. I didn't do this. Our own government, the DOJ came in, FBI, the IRS, and they attacked MyPillow so I would quit talking about the election. They went to our vendors and said, don't do business with MyPillow. We were debanked 4 times. I mean, we survived. We were able to guide that. That's pretty good. CEO, I give the glory to God, but it's me. I had to guide this through in spite of all the attacks by our own government. So I think people should go, wow, Mike guided that through in spite of the attacks. I can get Minnesota out of these terrible, terrible things we're into, to all these attacks and fraud. Absolutely.
All right, Mike, we're going to have to leave it there. Mike Lindell, a Republican candidate for Minnesota governor. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Brian.